Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In this particular video, we are going to discuss about the tariff war that Trump has unleashed, especially with India, and who is winning this trade war. That is what we are going to discuss in this video in particular detail. So first of all, to give you about the idea regarding the Trump's tariff policy, we know that out of all the countries that Trump has imposed after coming into power, India has today become most tariff nation. We know that he has imposed a tariff of about 25%, which further was increased to another 25% because he believed that it is India's buying of Russian oil is fueling the Ukrainian war. Now, what basically Trump believes here is that the tariff that US will impose, every extra percent tariff that US imposes will fix the US trade problems such as trade deficit and other related problems as such. In simplest term, if you have to understand, tariff is nothing but a kind of barrier a country imposes against the goods being imported from some other countries. So basically tariff is nothing but a sort of tax on the import a country basically engages with. And if you try to understand, basically if import is tariffed at higher rate, that means this imported commodities, imported good is for the consumption of the citizens of the country itself, like in this case US, we can understand, consider. So obviously it is the American citizens who will have to pay higher rate of taxes, and they will have to pay higher price for the commodities that were earlier cheaper as such. And that is why across the world economists have a broad consensus and general belief that tariff is something that is not good. Any country that imposes tariff on import are basically hurting their own economies as well. And in this context, we can take this stand of a Nobel Prize winner, Nobel Prize winner economist Milton Friedman, who has called tariff nothing but an example of self-imposed blockade. So basically, what Trump is doing, it is not the Trump's policy is hurting India or Trump's policy is hurting China or other countries on which he has imposed tariff. In essence, it's the Trump policies which are having what you can call as a boomerang effect. That means it is hurting the American consumers most. Now, if you look at the conceptions that Trump has, due to which he has imposed this tariff. So first of all, obviously, Trump thinks the tariffs are paid by foreign consumers, and that is obviously incorrect. We just have established that any extra tariff that is levied by US, this extra tariff, extra tax will be paid by the American consumer, no one else. Second, the reality, as we have discussed, is US consumer bear the cost. Also, he treats US as the largest economy. As we know that if you compare the economy of US with other nearby countries, other basically trading partners, we can understand that it is largest economy. But he considered that despite US being the largest economy, it has been trade victim because of the lesser tariff that American import has from these countries as such. And thus, he views all the smaller economies as nothing but an example of cheater. He uses tariff as a political as well as economic weapons as such. Now, if you try to understand that what is the overall concept of reciprocal tariff, because this term has been quite in use since Trump took office as 47th president of the United States. So Trump idea was very simple, that if US imposes higher rate of tariff, it will reduce or maybe end the trade deficit of US with other countries. Trade deficit in simple term can be understood as a difference between the total amount of goods or value of goods being exported minus total amount of goods being imported. So if trade deficit is negative, it means that country is importing more than exporting. If trade deficit is positive, that means that is country is exporting more than import as such. So deficit is simply, if deficit has to be reduced, import has to be also reduced as such, and putting an extra tariff barrier might do the task as such. That is why Trump has been imposing tariff even on poor nations with limited trade. For example, many countries of Africa, many countries of Southeast Asia such as Vietnam, Thailand has been victim of such policy of Trump. However, he ignores the global trade norms of fairness and proportionality. It is based on this concept. World Trade Organization was brought into existence, which has ensured that across the world, countries are not using unfair trade practices to restrict any kind of movement or exchange of goods and services such. Because such kind of problems create imbalances in trade relationship and also causes overall reduction in the global trade volume. Now, before moving further, I would want to bring your attention to the fact that Legacy IAS Academy, we are going to soon commence our batches. Regular batch is going to commence on 22nd September and 16th of October. This is going to the weekday batch. Every day between Monday to Friday, we'll have classes between 10 to 1 and 2 to 5. Similarly, we have weekend batches for those aspirants who are trying to prepare for civil services examination along with the full-time job and all. So for them, we have batches starting on 4th and 25th of October. Now, if you look at the advantages that you'll have by enrolling in these courses, obviously here we focus on comprehensive coverage of entire GS papers right from 1 to 4. We have one-to-one mentorship and doubt solving sessions. We have regular interaction with educators. And to ensure that this interaction remains to maximum extent even in the classroom, we have a strict policy of 40 students per batch, not more than that, so that an ideal pupil-teacher ratio can be maintained. We also believe that integrated preparation require starting for both prelims, mains, and interview right from the beginning, and that is why we focus on daily mains and sporadic programs as well. We have test series which students can evaluate, get the appropriate feedback, and based on that they can further streamline their preparation and look at their strengths and weaknesses and all that. And plus we also focus not only on a static but 360-degree coverage of current affairs, especially which are relevant for UPSC civil service examination. Now, if you want to know more about the programs and the features and all, you can download the app, Legacy IAS app, or you can click the link in the description box of this particular video. Now, the first question that comes related to the Trump's policy is whether it is legal in nature as far as the US domestic law is concerned. Now, one thing we have to understand, that Constitution of United States specifically mentioned that deciding tariff is largely a responsibility of Congress. However, Trump has found a lacuna. He has issued executive orders by bypassing Congress by using emergency powers that is vested in the office of president, and he is using this emergency power for tariff actions. So this is kind of what you can call as lacuna or gap that he has found. However, obviously many scholars argue that if Trump keep on doing similar kind of stuff in future, legal challenges may be expected in US code, where the question of constitutionality will remain unresolved unless and until Supreme Court makes a decision about this, and then maybe Trump's tariff can be reversed, but this is again a long-term goal. Now, why other countries are not retaliating strongly? That is also a question that comes into mind, because it is not only that India and China on which Trump has Trump has basically imposed tariff. It is also the other neighboring countries, which, for example, you can talk about Canada, you can talk about Mexico. So apart from not only it is the competitors or rival countries, but it is the most close allies of US on which Trump also has imposed tariff. Example, Switzerland we can take from European Union. So the point here is that the other countries including European Union, China or India, they have not used retaliatory tariffs because they know that it will hurt their own consumers. Again, to revise, we know that any tariff on import has to be borne by the domestic consumers itself. So if India start to impose higher tariff rate on American goods, what will happen? Indian consumers will have to pay higher price, higher sum of money for the same American goods they were getting cheaper earlier as such. So counter tariff, they understand that not only the economic reality, but also it has to be taken into consideration. The geopolitical reality has to be taken into consideration. So we know that counter tariff will further escalate the trade war. We already have seen the evidence of this in case of US and China, where both countries went on increasing tariff and it went shot up to more than 130% and all that. Also, many countries on which US has imposed tariffs are relatively weaker economy as compared to US, and that is why they prioritize domestic stability, economic stability, political stability against retaliation as such. Now, obviously, because of the Trump's tariff, we know that American economy will not remain what you can call as American economy will face a very severe pressure because of this, and many scholars argue that especially small businesses that were earlier importing material, which were raw material at cheaper cost, they will have to pay higher prices, so they will be hurt most, and higher cost will obviously bring a degree of uncertainty in the economic activities, and as per the US Chamber of Commerce, it will have a devastating impact on not only the traders and the businessmen but also the consumers, and as consumers will have to shell out now higher amount of money for the same goods they were getting earlier at cheaper rate, obviously it will lead to increase in the retail inflation rate, and that will also create extra pressure, extra burden on the US economy as such. Now, as far as the future of this tariff chaos is concerned, is there any silver lining? The answer lies in the fact that there can be two possible triggers that can cause the entire situation to change. First, obviously, is as the economic pain for the domestic consumer rises in US, especially for consumers, and not only consumers but also businesses, that may act as what you can call as pressure on the Trump's administration, and because of this also there can be political backlash, because you know that in 2026 there is going to be midterm elections where there is election for the US House of Representatives as well as US Senate, and in this midterm elections, if Republican nominees began to lose, or if we can see the increase in the percentage of Democratic Party members, if their seat increases, that obviously will also further weaken Trump's administrative policies, and Congress shift might limit the tariff power as such. And also, if the Democratic Party and Democrats are able to get a majority in the House of Representatives or Senate In that case, Trump will become a lame duck president, because both parties then will try to think that who should be the next presidential candidate, as Trump already has lost, basically used his 2 terms presidency as such. So before 2028 elections, there can be certain changes, but one thing is certain for now, that this kind of policy that Trump has taken both against rivals, competitors and friends have created a dent in the image of the US, and also has created a kind of mistrust between India specifically and US, which till now has enjoyed a relationship growing in an upward trajectory. That is all about this particular video. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share this with your aspirants, as a subscribe to channel for more such content. Thank you very much.